The sea holds secrets older than memory. Waves whisper to the shore, carrying voices of forgotten kings. Beneath the surface, shadows move like dreams half remembered. This is not a tale of war, nor of conquest. It is a story of longing, of pride, and of destiny. Far below the horizon lies the realm of Poseidon. He is lord of the oceans, keeper of tides, master of storms. His palace shimmers with coral towers and halls of pearl, yet even a god may feel the weight of silence. Above the waters, a queen ruled a kingdom by the sea. She was loved for her wisdom, feared for her strength. Each dawn she walked the shoreline, speaking softly to the waves. Her voice was steady, but her heart carried burdens unseen. Poseidon heard her words through the restless tides. Her prayers rose with the foam, carried into his halls. The sea god listened, curious, stirred by her courage. From that moment, two worlds began to drift closer. The mortal queen, bound to her land and people. The immortal god, bound to the ocean's endless depth. And between them, the tide began to rise. The ocean stretches without end, vast and unbroken. Its surface glitters by day, reflecting the fire of the sun. By night, it shimmers beneath the patient gaze of the moon. But the sea is more than water, more than tides and waves. It is a kingdom hidden, a realm unseen by mortal eyes. Here dwells Poseidon, the ancient lord of the oceans. He is the master of tides, the shaper of storms. His trident commands the waves, summoning calm or chaos. Beneath the waters, his palace rises like a dream. Coral towers glow with light from living gems. Pearl halls echo with songs sung by unseen choirs. The floors are of glass, revealing whales passing below. Schools of silver fish scatter like sparks of starlight. Dolphins leap through arches, their voices ringing like bells. It is a place of wonder, alive with mystery. And yet, within this palace, Poseidon feels alone. For the sea belongs to him, but it speaks in silence. Its depths hold beauty, but not companionship. No mortal has seen these halls, nor touched this throne. The god watches from his high seat, listening to the currents. He knows the whispers of rivers, the cries of storms. He knows the laughter of gulls carried far by the wind. But he does not know the voice of one who understands. Immortality is endless, yet endlessness can be empty. He remembers the making of the seas, their rising and falling. He remembers the first ships that dared to cross his realm. He remembers the prayers cast into the waves by sailors. Sometimes they asked for mercy, sometimes for fortune. But always their voices came in fear or in need. Few spoke with gentleness, few spoke with grace. The god longed to hear words not born of desperation. He longed for a soul who could meet the sea as an equal. For centuries, the ocean rolled and tumbled in its rhythm. Poseidon wandered its depths, from trenches to coral, reefs. He watched volcanoes bloom beneath the waves, shaping islands. He saw whales journey across oceans, ancient as himself. He listened to the sound of waves against distant shores. Every shore told a different story, a different people. Some worshipped him with temples carved from stone. Others feared him, offering sacrifices to appease his anger. Yet temples crumble, and offerings turn to dust. What remained constant was the voice of the sea itself. It carried every word spoken to the waves. And though most voices faded, one day a new one came. But before that meeting, Poseidon drifted in reflection. He thought of his brothers, Zeus upon the sky, Hades beneath the earth, silent among the shades. They ruled their realms, each with its own crown. Poseidon's crown was of foam and salt. It was heavy with the endless responsibility of the tides. He could drown a city or bless it with plenty. But power without company is a lonely gift. And so he lingered in his halls of coral and pearl, silent, watchful, waiting for something unknown. The sea beyond was restless, full of change. Currents shifted, winds stirred, stars wheeled above. Even gods cannot stop the turning of the world. And deep within, Poseidon felt the pull of destiny. The ocean knew that its lord was waiting, waiting for a voice unlike all others, waiting for a heart that could reach across the tides. And so his realm, vast and eternal, held its breath. For soon, a mortal queen would speak. On the edge of the sea stood a kingdom of stone and song. Its walls faced the horizon, carved against storms and salt winds. Ships rose and fell in the harbor, sails billowing like wings. The people thrived where land met ocean, bound to the tide. And at the heart of this realm lived their queen. She was not born to luxury, but to duty. From childhood, she learned to speak with wisdom beyond her years. Her people loved her voice, calm as twilight, strong as the dawn. She judged fairly with kindness, but never with weakness. When the harvests failed, she shared her own table. When storms struck the coast, she walked among the ruined homes. She was a queen of the people, not a throne of distance. Her crown was gold, but her heart was made of earth. And yet, her life was not free of burdens. The kingdom leaned upon the sea for food and trade. But the sea was fickle, shifting between gift and grief. Some years the waters brought abundance, their nets full to breaking. Other years storms swept away boats and lives. The queen carried the weight of both fortune and sorrow, every decision touched by the ocean's will. At night she stood upon the balcony of her hall. From there she saw the waves shining silver in moonlight. She spoke softly into the wind, as though someone might listen. Her words were not commands, but confessions. She spoke of her fears, her doubts, her longing for peace. The ocean answered only with restless sighs. Still she returned each night, her faith unbroken. The people believed their queen had favor with the sea. They said her voice was strong enough to calm storms. Children whispered that she could speak with dolphins. Fishermen prayed at dawn, asking her blessing before sailing. Her name carried weight like the steady anchor of a ship. But to the queen, these were burdens wrapped as honors. She loved her people more than her crown. Yet she felt herself small before the vast horizon. The sea could not be commanded, only endured. And though her subjects saw her as unshakable, she felt fragile. Loneliness walked with her in quiet hours. Her throne stood high, yet it set her apart. No equal shared her burdens, no friend matched her crown. She sometimes dreamed of leaving the stone walls behind, to walk among her people as she once had. But duty is a chain that binds tighter than iron. The sea was both her ally and her captor. It gave life, yet threatened ruin. Her prayers grew more personal, shaped by longing. She no longer asked for wealth nor victories. She asked for calm waters, for gentle tides. She asked for mercy on the fishermen and their children. She asked for a moment of stillness in her soul. Each word carried by wind and wave, scattered across the dark. Unseen by her eyes, these words reached further than she knew. The sea carried them, folding them into its endless voice. And deep beneath, a god listened in silence. But for now, the queen only knew the stars above. Her hand rested on the balcony rail, eyes on the horizon. The tide rolled and broke upon the shore, steady as breath. She felt its rhythm in her heart, old as the world. Some nights it frightened her with its immensity. Other nights it comforted her like a lullaby. Always she returned to it, as though drawn by fate. And so the queen lived between land and sea. Her people adored her, her burdens shaped her. Her prayers drifted into the night, unanswered. But change was already moving beneath the waves, and destiny was drawing near, quiet as the tide. The day faded into twilight, painting the sky with gold and violet. The sea mirrored those colors, restless yet beautiful. Along the shoreline, the queen walked in silence. Her feet pressed into the damp sand, each step steady. The air was heavy with salt, cool against her skin. The waves rose and fell with patient rhythm. She paused, looking out toward the endless horizon. Her people slept, but she remained awake. The burdens of rule did not rest with the setting sun. Alone, she often found comfort by the sea. It was here she spoke words meant for no court, words only the ocean could hear if it chose. That night, her voice trembled, yet was firm. She spoke of storms that ruined harvest and home. She spoke of sailors lost to sudden squalls. She spoke of children who cried at night with hunger. She did not ask for riches or power. She asked for calm seas, for steady tides. She asked for the safety of her people. Her voice carried across the water like a hymn. The sound mingled with the sigh of the waves. Unseen, Poseidon listened from his hidden throne. The god of the sea heard her words clear as bells. They were not cries of fear, nor empty prayers. They were honest, simple, filled with devotion. He had heard countless mortals, but none like this. Her words did not beg nor demand. They spoke of love, not of self, but of others. The sea god felt curiosity stir within him. He rose from the depths, unseen by mortal eyes. His form was vast, woven from tide and shadow. The queen stood still, unaware of his presence. Her gaze remained on the horizon, steady as the moon. The waves grew gentler as if answering her. The tide rolled forward, kissing the shore softly. She closed her eyes, breathing in the salt air. Her lips moved with quiet prayer, unbroken. Poseidon lingered, watching in silence. He had seen kings kneel with fear in their hearts. He had heard warriors shout for victory at sea. He had watched sailors toss coins into the waves. But never had he seen a queen who spoke so. Her strength was not sharpened by swords. Her power was not bound to gold or armies. It was bound to her people, fragile yet strong. The god of the sea felt something long forgotten, a pull that was neither storm nor command, a whisper of kinship, faint but real. Still, he did not show himself to her. The queen walked slowly, her shadow stretching long. She bent to touch the water, fingertips grazing foam. It was a gesture of trust, simple, pure. Poseidon felt the ripple echo through his realm. He wondered if she sensed him, hidden below. Perhaps she felt only the vastness of the sea. Yet her presence lingered with him as she turned away. She returned to her hall, but her voice remained. The words sank deep into currents, carried far. The sea held them like treasures, like pearls. Poseidon returned to his coral halls and thought. The queen had spoken, and the ocean had listened. That night, the god could not find rest. Her voice echoed within him, steady as the tide. A mortal voice, yet filled with timeless strength. The waves rolled on, whispering her name. It was the beginning of something unforeseen. The sea itself seemed to wait in silence. For the meeting of two worlds was near, and destiny, like the tide, was rising. The night deepened, and the stars cast silver fire on the sea. The queen lingered by the shore, unaware of unseen eyes. Beneath the waves, Poseidon rose with the silence of the tide. His gaze pierced the water, fixed upon the mortal queen. He studied her face, lit by moonlight and shadow. Her expression was calm, yet marked by quiet sorrow. The god of oceans had seen countless mortals before. Kings, warriors, sailors, and wanderers had all come and gone. But none had drawn his attention as she did now. Her voice still echoed in his ears like a hymn. It was not fear, nor praise, but truth unadorned. Each word she spoke carried strength and gentleness alike. Poseidon drifted closer, cloaked by the vastness of the sea. Currents shifted as though holding their breath in reverence. He felt the ocean itself leaning toward her presence. The waves calmed, soft as whispers at her feet. The queen, sensing peace, stepped nearer to the water. Her gown brushed the foam, trailing like a memory. She reached out a hand, as if greeting the sea. Poseidon felt the touch as though upon his own skin. A mortal hand, yet filled with uncommon courage. The god had seen mortals kneel, beg, and curse the tide. Never before had one approached with such quiet trust. Her eyes lifted to the horizon, not downward in fear. She seemed to speak not to command, but to share. The ocean god felt something stir within him. It was not the wrath of storms, but the calm of still waters. He listened as she whispered once more into the night. May the waves rest. May the children sleep in peace. The words sank into him, shaping silence into meaning. The tide answered with gentleness, a gift from the deep. The queen smiled faintly, though no one stood beside her. Poseidon lingered, torn between distance and revelation. To reveal himself was to change the course of her life. To remain hidden was to guard his solitude forever. For centuries he had ruled without sharing his throne. The sea was wide, yet it left him restless. Now a single mortal voice had broken the silence. He felt destiny rise like a tide he could not command. The queen turned from the shore, walking back to her hall. Her shadow stretched long, her steps steady but heavy. The god followed with his gaze until she was gone. Still he felt her presence linger on the waves. Her words moved through the currents, weaving with the sea. In the halls of coral, Poseidon carried them with him. The choirs of the deep seemed softer that night. The whales sang slower, the currents drifted in thought. Even the silence of the abyss seemed touched by her prayer. Poseidon sat upon his throne, but his mind was elsewhere. He thought of her voice, of the courage in her eyes. He thought of the way her hand touched the foam. And for the first time in centuries, the god felt wonder. Not at storms, nor mountains beneath the sea, but at a mortal queen, fragile yet unyielding. He closed his eyes, hearing again her whispered plea. It lingered like a melody woven into the tide. The sea held many secrets, yet this one felt alive. As dawn neared, the god did not rest. He waited, knowing she would return to the shore again. And when she did, the sea would listen. For Poseidon had already begun to change, and the queen had already begun to awaken destiny. The dawn rose, painting the sea in shades of gold and blue. The queen awoke early, her heart stirred by dreams of the shore. She moved with grace, though her eyes carried weight unseen. The hall was silent, servants whispering of omens in the night. Yet she walked past them, her steps certain, her thoughts steady. Her path led once more to the edge of the sea. Waves rolled gently as though waiting for her return. She stood still, breathing deeply of salt and sky. The ocean stretched endless, but she felt it draw close. Her voice rose again, quiet, tender, yet resolute. She spoke not for herself, but for her people's peace. May the sea guard us. May it hold no wrath. The words floated across the tide like prayers on the wind. Unseen beneath the surface, Poseidon listened in silence. His realm stirred, creatures circling as if sensing his thoughts. The god felt her words like stones cast into deep waters. Each sank and echoed, shaping currents into strange new patterns. He could not look away from the mortal on the shore. Her faith was not in power, but in harmony itself. Poseidon rose closer, the surface rippling faintly above his crown. His trident gleamed with a dim light from the abyss. Yet still he hesitated, bound by laws older than memory. Gods were forbidden to linger long in mortal affairs. To draw near was to tempt the threads of destiny. But destiny was already moving with a rhythm of its own. The queen placed her hand over her heart, eyes closed. She whispered again, her words like a song to the sea. Let the waves bring hope, not sorrow to the children. Poseidon's chest stirred with an unfamiliar ache of longing. It was not the hunger for worship, but for understanding. For ages he had ruled with might, feared by many. Yet here stood one who offered no fear, no demand. Instead, she spoke as though the sea were a friend. A god of storms felt suddenly like a listener of prayers. The wind shifted, carrying her words farther across the water. Seabirds circled above, their cries softer than usual. The tide itself rose higher, but with gentle rhythm. Poseidon's power moved with restraint, honoring her presence. At last, he let his voice echo from the deep, not loud like thunder, but low as a whisper in waves. Why do you speak to the sea as if it hears? The queen startled, her eyes widening, yet she did not flee. Her gaze swept the water, seeking the voice's source. Her lips trembled, yet her spirit remained firm. Because I believe all things alive can listen, she said. The ocean stilled, as if bending to her belief. Poseidon felt her words strike deeper than any temple song. She spoke not with ritual, but with truth unshaped. He lingered, torn between shadow and revelation. His heart thundered like waves against unseen cliffs. At last, he chose to remain unseen, but close. The queen bowed slightly to the water and stepped back. Her eyes glimmered with wonder, though no form appeared. She returned to her hall, her soul both heavy and light. Behind her, the sea breathed slow and steady. Poseidon remained beneath, watching, listening, waiting. He had spoken once, and she had answered. A bridge was built, fragile but real, between mortal and God. And in that fragile thread, destiny began to weave. The ocean, once endless and empty, now felt alive. And Poseidon, ruler of tides, felt the first stirrings of change. The moon returned, bright and full, casting silver light on the waves. The queen walked again to the water's edge, drawn by silence. Her heart knew the sea now carried more than foam and salt. It carried a voice, deep and low, that lingered in memory. She stepped closer, her gown brushing against the tide's embrace. The water curled around her feet, warm as though alive. She whispered softly, her words blending with the rhythm of waves. I do not know your name, but I feel you near. Beneath the surface, Poseidon listened, silent, steady, and waiting. The god's heart swelled with a pull he could not resist. Her voice reached him deeper than chants sung in grand temples. It was not worship nor plea, but the gift of truth. He rose higher, his trident casting faint glow in the deep. For a moment, he almost broke the surface of the tide. But hesitation bound him, fear of breaking what was fragile. He remained hidden, though the sea shimmered with his presence. The queen lifted her eyes to the stars, unafraid and calm. Her hand brushed the foam, her fingers tracing circles of light. You are not storm, you are not wrath. she whispered. You are something greater, something the world cannot yet name. Poseidon's chest stirred as though thunder rolled inside his heart. He longed to answer, to let her see him in truth. But the laws of gods chained his will, ancient and unyielding. Still, he could not stop the sea from bending to her. The waves softened, wrapping her ankles like gentle silk ribbons. The queen smiled faintly, sensing she was no longer alone. The night air carried the scent of salt and quiet wonder. Above, the stars shone brighter, as if drawn to her words. She sat upon a stone near the water's restless edge. Her voice rose again, steady and calm like a hymn. If you hear me, know I thank you for peace. Poseidon closed his eyes, struck by the purity of her prayer. For centuries, mortals had called upon him for power or fear. They begged for storms to end or prayed for conquest at sea. But none had thanked him for silence, for calm, for peace. He felt her words etch themselves deep into the current's flow. The whales sang softer, the fish swam closer to her shore. Even the coral seemed to glow faintly in response. The sea became a mirror of her spirit, calm and alive. At last, Poseidon let his voice roll from the depths. Why do you not fear the sea as others do? The queen gasped, her hand clutching her chest at the sound. Yet she stood firm, her eyes upon the water's vast horizon. I fear storms, but not the sea itself, she answered. It gives life, it takes, but it always returns. Poseidon felt her words break chains older than memory. The sea itself seemed to hum with quiet reverence. He rose nearer, the water lifting into shapes like whispers. But still he held back, revealing only his voice, not form. The queen bowed her head, her eyes glimmering with faith. If you are real, I will come again tomorrow, she said. Her promise hung in the air, like a vow to the tide. Poseidon watched her leave, her shadow fading into the night. The waves followed her steps until she was gone from sight. In the halls of the deep, the god remained restless. Her words replayed, striking chords he had long forgotten. Not power, not fear, but gratitude and trust. It was a language older than the sea itself. And Poseidon knew he would wait for her return. For destiny had already chosen its path across the waves. The days passed, and the queen returned each evening to the shore. Her people whispered of her solitude, yet none dared question her. They saw the peace in her eyes and trusted her silence. Each night she stood by the waves, speaking softly to the sea. Poseidon listened, hidden beneath, his heart stirred by every word. The god who once ruled storms now longed only for her voice. Her prayers wove into the tides like threads of golden light. Sometimes she spoke of her people, their struggles and hopes. Sometimes she spoke of herself, her dreams woven with sorrow. And sometimes she spoke of nothing, simply letting silence breathe. The sea answered each time, calmer, gentler, as if in love. Poseidon felt himself change, no longer just a god of wrath. He found in her words a mirror of his forgotten depths. She gave him not fear, not worship, but companionship unspoken. One night the queen lingered longer, her eyes fixed on stars. Her hand brushed the foam, her voice hushed yet strong. If you are real, then know you are not alone. The words pierced Poseidon deeper than tridents or thunder. He rose nearer, letting the surface glow faintly with his power. The queen gasped softly, her eyes reflecting the shimmering waves. Her heart raced, yet her feet did not move from the shore. Who are you? She whispered, her voice steady as the tide. Poseidon let his voice echo, deeper than mountains, softer than night. I am the sea. The tide, the storm, the calm. The queen trembled, for she knew no mortal voice could answer so. "Then you are Poseidon," she said, her words a breath of awe. The ocean stilled, for his name had not been spoken by her before. "Yes," he answered, the deep rolling like thunder in sleep. "But why do you speak to me without fear?" The queen's eyes shone, her hand pressing against her chest. "Because I see not a god of fury, but a spirit of balance." Poseidon's heart thundered like waves breaking upon ancient cliffs. Never before had a mortal dared to speak so plainly, yet her words did not offend him. They healed him. For centuries he had been painted as wrath and chaos. But she had seen something more, something no hymn had named. He lingered, letting silence wrap around them both like a tide. The queen stepped closer, the water touching her gown with silver. "Will you walk with me, or must you remain unseen?" she asked. Poseidon faltered, torn between divine law and mortal desire. To show himself was to bind their fates together forever. Yet to remain hidden was to deny the truth they shared. The sea churned, torn between revelation and restraint. At last he whispered, "Not yet, but soon." The queen bowed her head, her lips curving with quiet trust. "Then I will wait," she said, her words soft as dawn. The tide carried her vow into the heart of the deep. Poseidon felt it bind to him like chains made of light. Chains he welcomed, for they were not burden, but gift. The queen returned to her hall, her spirit alight with wonder. The sea followed her, gentle waves lapping at her path. Beneath, Poseidon lingered long into the night, restless and alive. He had spoken his name, and she had answered with faith. The ocean itself felt changed, warmed by their secret bond. And though gods and mortals were never meant to unite, destiny whispered otherwise. For the queen had touched the sea, and the sea had touched her heart, and nothing in the world would remain the same again. The night sky stretched vast, its stars trembling over the quiet sea. The queen walked alone, the tide greeting her like an old friend. Her footsteps left faint imprints on the sand, quickly erased by waves. She paused at the edge, her eyes reflecting silver light above. The sea glimmered, alive with hidden strength beneath its stillness. Poseidon waited, his spirit restless, his thoughts bound to her presence. Every word she had spoken lingered like echoes in the deep. He had ruled eternity, yet now he measured time by her visits. The queen lowered herself to a stone, her gown brushing the foam. Her voice rose, fragile yet steady, carried on the salt wind. "You are real, though unseen, and I feel you here tonight." The water curled closer, shimmering faintly with Poseidon's silent response. She smiled faintly, as though hearing words without sound. "You guard the tides, but perhaps you also guard hearts," she said. Poseidon felt his chest stir, thunder echoing through the halls of coral. Her words pierced beyond the throne, beyond power, into something eternal. The queen leaned closer, whispering as though to a confidant. "My people dream of safety, but I dream of truth." Poseidon drew nearer, the waves rising higher at her feet. "Truth is dangerous, mortal queen." His voice rolled, soft as the tide. The queen startled, yet steadied herself, her gaze fixed on the sea. "Danger does not frighten me if it means knowing you," she answered. The god's silence stretched long, broken only by the hush of waves. He longed to rise, to stand before her in full form. Yet he feared the weight of eternity upon her mortal frame. Still, the bond between them deepened with every whispered exchange. The queen touched the water with her hand, eyes shining with wonder. I do not seek power nor gifts, she said firmly. I seek only to listen and to be heard. Poseidon's heart thundered like waves colliding with ancient stone. For centuries, mortals begged, demanded, cursed, or praised his name. But never had one asked only for the gift of listening. It was a treasure rarer than pearls, older than the tides. He let the sea answer, waves curling like gentle hands around her. The queen laughed softly, a sound pure as a bell. You are kinder than the world believes, she whispered. Poseidon closed his eyes, her laughter a melody in his depths. He had been called cruel, tempest, destroyer of fleets. Yet with her, he felt not fury, but serenity. The queen lifted her gaze to the stars once more. Will there be a day I see you with my eyes? She asked. Poseidon's voice rose, low, reluctant, yet filled with longing. Yes, he said, but when you are ready. Her lips curved into a faint smile, her eyes shimmering with trust. Then I will wait, no matter how long it takes. Her vow echoed into the night, carried deep into the abyss. The god felt her words bind stronger than chains of Olympus. The waves bowed at her feet, softer than silk. She lingered, her hand tracing patterns in the water's glow. Good night, sea, she whispered, before turning back to her hall. Poseidon remained, watching, listening, torn by the fire within him. The ocean roared softly, holding secrets no mortal could yet know. But destiny had shifted, and the god of tides could not return. For a mortal queen had spoken to the sea, and the sea had answered. And in that fragile bond, the beginning of forever had been written. The morning came bright, the waves calmer than the queen had ever known. Her people noticed the sea's gentleness and praised her as blessed. They thought the gods smiled on her reign, though they did not know why. She accepted their gratitude, but kept her secret close to her heart. Each night she returned to the shore, where the sea awaited her steps. Poseidon listened always, his presence veiled but near enough to feel. Their words, though few, grew into threads stronger than any vow. The queen spoke not as a worshiper, but as a companion and equal. She told him of her dreams, her fears, her longing for peace. Poseidon shared silence, for his heart spoke louder than speech. The ocean itself bent with her, its tides following her breath. But whispers spread across the land, carried by servants and sailors. They wondered why their queen often walked alone to the shore. Rumors grew like ivy, twisting into tales of mystery and fear. Some said she prayed for love, others claimed she spoke to spirits. Yet the queen did not waver, for her heart knew truth. Poseidon too felt the stir of unease in mortal voices. Gods were not meant to linger so close to mortal lives. But still he returned, drawn to her like moon to tide. One evening, the queen stood waiting longer than before. Her gown shimmered silver beneath the watchful eyes of the stars. Why do you remain unseen, if you are bound to me? She asked. Poseidon rose within the sea, torn by longing and law. I am forbidden to walk among mortals freely, he confessed. Yet my spirit is yours, and the ocean itself answers you. The queen closed her eyes, her lips trembling with quiet resolve. Then I asked not for a god, but for a soul. Poseidon's heart thundered like storms crashing over cliffs unseen. Never had a mortal spoken to him with such simple clarity. Not worship, not fear, but truth offered without chains. The ocean glowed faintly, the waves rising in silver light. His shadow rose within the water, vast and shimmering. The queen gasped, yet her gaze did not falter. I am here, Poseidon said, his voice rolling like distant thunder. Her heart raced, but she smiled, tears gleaming at her eyes. "You are more than sea and storm," she whispered. "You are what waits in silence, what listens when no one else does." Her words struck him deeper than all hymns sung in temples. He reached outward, his hand of water curling near her own. The tide touched her fingers, warm, alive, filled with divine breath. The queen shivered but did not withdraw, her soul bound to his. From the cliffs above, unseen eyes watched with growing suspicion. A guard whispered to another, then hurried back to the city. The sea carried secrets, but mortals carried stories louder still. Poseidon felt the shift, danger blooming like shadow in the air. Yet he lingered, unwilling to break from her presence. "Soon the world will know," he said, his voice heavy with fate. "Then let them know," the queen answered, her courage unbroken. "For I will not hide the truth of what my heart holds." The sea trembled, for her vows shook the roots of destiny itself. And though storms brewed beyond the horizon, love bound them stronger. For a queen had touched a god, and a god had answered. And the world, whether ready or not, would soon be forced to see. The city stirred with whispers, each one heavier than the last. Servants carried tales, merchants repeated them, and sailors swore they knew. The queen's nightly walks to the shore became the heart of rumor. Some claimed she consorted with spirits, others whispered of forbidden love. The council grew restless, their trust strained by what they did not see. They loved their queen, but fear is a shadow that spreads quickly. In hushed chambers, they asked one another what held her gaze at sea. Meanwhile, Poseidon lingered closer, restless, drawn by her every breath. He knew the murmur of mortals was more dangerous than storms. Still, he could not bear to sever the bond that had grown. Each night he answered her with waves that bowed like worshippers. The queen smiled through the whispers, unshaken in her secret truth. But her silence only made the rumors sharper, hungrier for answers. One evening, the council confronted her beneath the torches of the hall. They asked why she strayed alone to the water's edge so often. They asked what voices called her, what power claimed her heart. The queen lifted her chin, her eyes steady as stone. "I walked to the shore to speak with the sea," she said. Her words fell like stones in water, rippling through the chamber. Some gasped in awe, others frowned in suspicion, fear sparking in their eyes. They pressed her harder, voices rising like crows around her throne. "Do you serve the sea? Do you betray us for another master?" Her lips curved, not with anger, but with quiet defiance. "I serve no master. I honor the sea because it listens." The council murmured, troubled, but no proof could chain her will. That night, she returned again to the shore, her heart heavy. Poseidon rose within the waves, sensing her spirit weighed with doubt. "They question you," he said, his voice echoing low and mournful. "Yes," she whispered, "but I cannot betray the truth we share." He longed to rise in form, to shield her with his presence. Yet he knew to show himself fully would bind her to danger. Still, her strength amazed him, her resolve greater than kings of old. "You risk much for me," Poseidon said, the tide dark with sorrow. The queen smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I risk nothing if it means walking in truth," she whispered. The sea stirred, its heart torn between love and divine law. Above, lightning trembled faintly on the edge of the horizon. It was not his doing, but the warning of fate approaching. The queen touched the water with her hand, her voice a vow. "Let them whisper. Let them doubt. My heart will not falter." Poseidon bowed the waves before her, as if kneeling in devotion. For the first time in eternity, the god of storms felt small. Small before the courage of a mortal who would not bend. The tide carried her vow into the depths, binding god and queen. But far from the shore, unseen by both, other powers stirred. Whispers reached the ears of priests, who bowed to Olympus itself. They feared not the queen, but the god who walked too near. And so they prepared prayers sharp as daggers, offerings heavy with warning. For no god could entwine with mortal life without consequence, and no queen could claim the sea without waking the eyes of heaven. The storm that had been promised was drawing ever closer. Neither Poseidon nor the queen could yet see its full shape. But destiny had shifted, and Olympus itself had begun to watch. And soon, the truth of their bond would no longer remain hidden. The storm rose at last, fierce and unyielding, summoned not by mortals, but by fate itself. Winds tore at the coast, waves roared higher than walls of stone. The people fled inland, crying to the gods for mercy and safety. But the queen stood unshaken at the shore, her gown drenched in salt. Poseidon rose within the tempest, torn between wrath and sorrow. He had not willed this storm, yet Olympus demanded its weight. The heavens glared down, for no god may give heart to a mortal. Yet here stood one, unafraid, her gaze lifted into the storm. "Poseidon!" she cried, her voice clear against thunder. "I do not fear." The waves hushed for a moment, as though bowing to her will. Poseidon's form shimmered, vast, crowned with coral and shadowed with lightning. "Queen," he thundered, "your love binds me, yet it brings doom." Her lips trembled, but her words flowed steady as the tide. Love is not doom. Love is the anchor that steadies the storm. Poseidon faltered, his power torn by her truth and the law above. The storm raged harder, Olympus testing his heart with furious force. The sea god turned, his eyes glowing with unyielding resolve. "I will not abandon her," he cried into the roaring sky. Lightning split the heavens, thunder cracking like judgment on stone. But the queen lifted her hand, her voice soft as dawn. "If this is the end, then let me stand with you." Poseidon reached for her, his hand of water shimmering with light. Their touch met at last, mortal skin and divine tide entwined. The sea glowed, not with fury, but with golden warmth untold. The storm slowed, the waves bowing as if to kneel before them. Olympus raged, yet the earth itself whispered in defiance of heaven. The queen felt her breath stolen, her body drawn into the tide. Poseidon's heart shattered, yet he would not release her to death. Instead, he bound her soul with his own, deep in the abyss. The people searched the coast, but their queen was never found again. Some wept, believing the sea had claimed her in fury and grief. But the waters grew calm, gentler than they had been in ages. Fishermen spoke of waves that never overturned, of storms that always broke. They told of a queen's song carried in the hush of tides, and they swore her voice guided them safely through darkest waters. In the deep, Poseidon's halls glowed with a light unknown before. Beside his throne stood the queen, no longer mortal, no longer lost. Her form shimmered with the sea's eternal breath, crowned with pearls of dawn. She was not drowned, but reborn. The ocean her kingdom as well. Poseidon gazed upon her, no longer wrath, but filled with peace. Together, they ruled not as god and mortal, but as equals bound. Their love was carved in the currents, in every tide that touched the sand. And though Olympus raged, it could not undo what had been made. For love stronger than storms had forged a bond beyond God's reach. On quiet nights, sailors still whisper of the drowned queen, not drowned in sorrow, but drowned in eternity, alive in the sea. They say she walks the shores at dawn, her gown glistening with foam, her eyes bright as stars, her voice calling the waves to her side. And in the silence between tides, one truth is always heard: that the sea once loved a queen, and the queen loved him back. And from that love, the ocean was never the same again.